the RBI on account aggregator framework. What the member services said and what Mr. Srivastav said, actually those principles are only incorporated in this. So we'll go ahead. Next slide, please.
Next slide visible?
Yeah.
Okay.
See, this is basically whatever Mr. Srivastava said, the principles are same, and these RBI directions are almost like, giving a banking license, whatever the framework are involved for giving a banking, almost like that they have constructed this framework. So this is service of collecting, retrieving or collecting of financial information pertaining to its customer, as may be specified by the Reserve Bank from time to time. Means what are the information which can be collected, which cannot be collected. Reserve Bank will be specific about that. And to consolidate, organize and present such information to the customer or any other financial information as may be specified by the bank. Here bank means Reserve Bank. So a customer has to, like he said, the consent of the person has to be given to what information can be shared. As we know, sir, that wherever finance is involved, the risk is very, very high, as we are seeing nowadays. Because wherever finance is involved, the risk is so much that we have to see the protection part is the focus here. Here, provided that the financial information pertaining to the customer shall not be the property of the account aggregator and not to be used in any other manner otherwise than how the customer has instructed them. Next slide, please. Yeah. So there is a lot of things in this involved. So basically, you can take it as deposit from banks, fixed deposits, saving deposits. Earlier, we used to have either a saving deposit or a fixed deposit, or maybe some other investments here and there. Now the gamut of investments has become so huge that, and it's going to expand further. So all these, whatever are as present there, RBI has included that. So you can see the whole list there. It includes even deposits with NBFCs, government securities, Indian depository receipts, alternate investment funds, insurance policies, national pension system also, and also real estate investment in trust and any other which RBI may instruct later. Can we go next slide, please? So who are all the whoever is regulating these financial sector in institutions, like RBI itself is there, SEBI, insurance regulator, and the provident fund regulator also. So who can be the financial information providers? Will be banks, NBFCs, asset management companies, depositories, insurance, pension fund, and host of other things are there, which may be private or which may be regulated entities also. So the financial information user, to whomever the information is being given, he should be a registered and regulated entity only. Means it cannot be shared with somebody who is an operator without having the authority. That's how the framework has been designed. Next, please. Yeah. So this aggregator should be a registered company, which is mandatory. He cannot be an unregistered company. And then he should have a certification of registration with RBI to carry on this account aggregator business. Now they have made one exception. Supposing the customer's information is only from a specific regulated specific sector itself, then they need not have this registration required. It is like a one-to-one arrangement between two people, two companies or two persons, so that doesn't need a regulation. If a second sector is also coming in, then automatically I think the account aggregator has to be registered. Initially, they have put the net owned funds of the account aggregator should be not less than 2 crore to show the financial soundness of that company. Okay. And leverage ratio, that is, if they have outside liabilities, apart from what the liabilities they have internal at the company, it should not be more than 7. Next. So what happens, supposing somebody comes and applies to RBI saying that I want to become an account aggregator. So till you see that whether he meets all the criteria, all the conditions he is meeting, they will be given an in principle approval. Done in all cases from RBI for 12 months. So put in place the technology and the legal requirement, whatever is required. So certificate of registration is given only after satisfactory compliance of all the requirements. That is meeting all the criteria, fit and proper criteria, funds, technology is in place, security is in place, data is in place. And then if anything is, any of the conditions is not met in these 12 months or even after 12 months after registration given, the certificate is liable to be cancelled. So there is no question of going back on this. Jitendra, next one. Next slide, please. Yeah. Now here, the duties and responsibilities of account aggregator, as within this framework now how they have given, the services which the account aggregator gives to the customer with explicit consent. This is what Mr. Srivastava also highlighting, that consent is very, very important. And explicit consent, it cannot be vague. So all appropriate agreements to be in place between the account aggregator, customer and the financial information provider. Since even the bank or the whichever entity, NBFC or any stock holding person is giving the information, it should be with a appropriate agreement should be there. See, a customer may have a part of the thing to only to be shared. It should be specified like that. It cannot be a blanket statement saying that everything in that entity should be passed on to the account aggregator. So it should be specific for each and every information being shared. And shall not support transaction. This is very, very important, sir. I think Mr. Srivastava also touched on this, that he cannot do any other activity other than aggregating the information. Because once he starts doing transactions, the whole gamut changes. It will become almost like a bank or a payment system service provider. So the account aggregator role has to be restricted to account aggregator only for sharing information from specified source to a specified destination. So, and as again, repeat of that same thing, the framework is based on he cannot store any of the information of the customer with him. Cannot be stored in any form. Only he has to get it from the information provider and pass it on to information user. Of course, the KYC, confidentiality and services, customers access credentials, all these can have to be absolutely safe. No, nothing to be shared outside, and data has to be protected, whatever in the channel as well as when it is in transit. So consent architecture, they have come with a very new term, consent artifact. So explicit consent of the customer required for retrieving, sharing or transferring financial information. So the focus here is on consent, privacy and delivery only to specific areas of specific information. Standardized consent architect to be obtained from the customer for all information, both financial and non-financial. Mr. Srivastava touched on the non-financial thing also, that anything other than the financial information, if it is coming to the notice of the account aggregator, that also has to be specifically obtained from the consent from the customer. So customer will be provided functionality to revoke the consent whenever he feels like, okay, if something is not satisfactory, he can always revoke the consent given for that particular information. Next one, sir. Now, information from financial information providers shall provide digitally signed information securely based only on a valid consent artifact. Now, even the information provider, whether it's a bank, NBFC or any other entity where he is holding the deposits or holding the financial information, has to be given in a digitally signed information and securely, of course, based on the consent artifact. And of course, account aggregator has to implement the interfaces with the financial information providers and means to digitally sign and submit, interact and share information. Means entire infrastructure the account aggregator has to put in place. Now digital sign and everything has to be IT based only. There is no question of having anything non-IT based information passing. I don't know if the email is there, that also has to be digitally signed, and both of them should have the private and public key to open and share the information. So they should have the means to verify the consent. Now, if the consent is given, whether the consent is genuine, that also has to be checked. So financial information user, he will get the information from the account aggregator. The financial information user as follows: verify identity of the financial information user first. Whether his financial information user is also genuine, that also has to be checked by the account aggregator before passing all the information. Then securely transfer the customer information. Providers shall provide digitally signed information securely based only on a valid consent artifact. Again, the focus is on the consent artifact. Okay. Then of course all services are available, should be available, like grievance redressal, which Mr. Member also touched upon. Customer information received. Sorry, we'll go back. One slide back, please. Confirm. Customer information used shall not be used or disclosed by the account aggregator or the financial information user except as specified in the consent artifact. Yeah, we can go for the next. Now, all the business will be entirely IT driven, information technology driven. As I said, it cannot be on any other format. Account aggregator shall not store customer credentials, passwords, pins, private keys, etc. Access shall only be based on consent-based authorization. Scalable technology shall have adequate safeguards against intrusion, alteration, destruction, disclosure, dissemination of records and data. We know technology is growing so fast that if he has a system which is not able to meet the present standards of technology, he should have provision to scale the technology. Means he should be financially sound and technologically also very sound and proactive. Then of course, as usual in any IT system, there should be disaster recovery, business continuity, audit provision, IT audit and normal audit provision also. So of course, all the related services like the grievance redressal, which member services touched upon. The nodal officer for any grievances, ombudsman scheme for non-banking financial companies. And pricing cannot be usurious, it has to be board approval only, board of that company approval. And all corporate governance functions have to be there, that fit and proper people only should be on the board and all. And audit function has to be taken very stringently. That's how the framework is started. I think I have a next slide, I think, one more. So the purely account aggregators in the latest list in the RBI website is these are 4 companies are there. Just for information I brought, how exactly these are functioning, it's a new concept actually in India. So how these are functioning, maybe the next presentations and even the account aggregators who are coming, they will give how exactly the whole thing is working. And of course, some recently Axis Bank and IndusInd Bank also are taking up the account aggregator function. So this is a small presentation I have based on the master direction. So if there are any questions, as Mr. Jitendra said, you can flag them. So or the Revit people can also read for that. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Raghuraji, for such a nice presentation. And you have shared the details about the account aggregator ecosystem RBI master directions. Yeah. So now as you have mentioned that you have 4 account aggregators are there. One of the account aggregator that is from the Kukija. His co-founder is today available in he's one of the speaker in our session. So he will be present his entire experience. He will share his entire experience with us. So yeah. Thank you very much for sparing your valuable time. Please, there will be a question answer session after all the technical session. That will be around 1:15. Please available on the platform. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, friends, next presentation is from our Revit team, and Revit team will be led by Mr. Saurabh Gupta and Mrs. Shali Kulkarni. Let me have a quick introduction about the Saurabh Gupta. Saurabh Gupta is a senior manager and business analyst with having more than 12 years of experience in IT services. Currently, he is part of the Rabbit Research and Innovation vertical and leading the business use cases. And another speaker is from Rabbit also. So it will be joint presentation. And Mrs. Shali Kulkarni, she is a lead API specialist with having more than 10 years of experience in this domain. She is considered one of the experts in the API designer. Currently, she is part of the Rabbit Research and Innovation vertical and driving the API specification standard development and governance process for RBI financial inclusion. So both of Saurabh Gupta and Mrs. Shali Kulkarni, both of you are welcome. Please, I hand over the platform to you for your presentation.
Thank you,
Jitanji.
Thank you, Jitanji. I'm going to share my screen.
Hope we are audible. Right?
Yes, you are audible.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank NTI-PRIT for giving us the opportunity and organizing this webinar on consent management for data sharing. Also, I would like to thank Srivastava and Nagaraj for the informative and knowledgeful sessions. Sally, we can start?
Yeah.
Yep. See, I would like to start by quoting a quote from Bill Gates. It is from late 90s, where he said that we need banking, but we don't need banks anymore. This quote is much applicable in today's pandemic scenario, wherein the customers are preferring to access the banking services either through net banking, mobile banking, or phone banking. But they are somewhere reluctant to go to the physical banks. During that time, he also said that rich people take for granted the loans, insurance, and banking services, which poor people have little access to. This may have been true in that scenario, in that situation, but given the current scenario in India, there has been considerable financial inclusion through which a major portion of the population have access to the financial services now. Now, coming on to the agenda for the session. This session would cover the details on India Stack, consent artifact structure, types of consents, AA ecosystem, that is the account aggregator ecosystem, and then we will cover onto the API specs and its development. Before coming on to the India Stack and all, I would like to give you a brief introduction about Rabbit. Reserve Bank Information Technology Private Limited, or more commonly called as Rabbit, has been set up by the RBI in 2016 with a vision of being a trusted technology partner for resilient Indian banking and to serve its IT, cybersecurity needs. Now, Rabbit comprises of 4 verticals, which are, the first one is the project management vertical, which looks over the delivering and managing of IT projects for RBI, cybersecurity, which is involved in safeguarding RBI asset by detecting and responding to cyber threats, R&I, that's research and innovation. This acts as a catalyst for innovation in RegTech, FinTech, SupTech, and cybersecurity, and is in spearheading research. And the last vertical is the systems audit, which assists RBI in performing risk-based supervision of regulated entities through audits and incident analysis. The topic which we would like to touch upon is India Stack. Now, India Stack is what is India Stack? Now, India Stack is basically a set of open APIs through which governments, businesses, startups, and even developers, they can access the data through an unique digital infrastructure and solve India's hard problem of presenceless, paperless, and cashless delivery. Now, just to have why this was required, as you can see in the bottom, we have a trinity called as JAM, that is Jan Dhan, Aadhaar, and Mobile. In the last few years, more than 1 billion Aadhaar numbers have been issued. The smartphone count has risen substantially, and more than 24 new bank accounts have been opened. 24 crore new bank accounts have been opened. This foundation is collectively called as Jan Dhan, Aadhaar, Mobile, or JAM Trinity, and is propelling India from a data poor to a data rich economy. This forms the base of the India Stack. The development of India Stack started in year 2009, wherein UIDAI was launched, and the first layer, that is the presence-less layer, was initiated. India Stack covers basically 4 stacks. The first one being the presence-less layer, wherein a universal biometric digital identity allows the people in the citizen of India to participate in any services from anywhere in the country. The example being the Aadhaar-based authentication and eKYC. Paperless layer, wherein the digital records move with an individual's digital identity, and it eliminates the need for massive amount of paper collection and storage. The example of this is e-signature and DigiLocker. The third layer becomes the cashless layer, wherein a single interface to all the country's bank accounts and wallets are democratizing the payments. The example of this is the Aadhaar-enabled payment systems, Aadhaar payment banks, and UPI. And the last one, the current which we are talking about right now, is the consent layer, which allows data to move freely, securely, and digitally, but only after the consent of the customer. This in the top, if you see, the top gives you the application of this entire India Stack, and it ranges from subsidies, that is the direct benefit transfers, the commerce, GSTN, Bharat Bill payment systems, FASTag and electronic toll collections, and to other health stack. Moving on to the next slide. The consent, the very basis of this discussion what we are having right now. What is the need for this electronic consent? Just like we mentioned in the previous slide, India is now becoming a data-rich economy, and being a data-rich economy has its demerits also, disadvantages, wherein the customer data is at the risk of unauthorized use, and as rightly said by Mr. Srivastava, it can lead to financial loss, reputation loss, and many other losses if it is used in a spurious way. And to ensure that the interaction between a user and the service provider is paperless, electronic, and in a highly trusted way, the Ministry of Electronic and Information Technology, commonly called as METI, they released the Electronic Consent Framework, and they drafted the structure of the consent artifact. Electronic consent is basically the digital equivalent of the physical letter of permission, wherein when it is presented, it allows the data provider to share the information with the data consumer only for a specific purpose. Okay. Now, an artifact as per the METI must include the following 5 sections. The first section being the identifier section, which specifies all the entities that are involved in the transaction, the data provider, data consumer, and even the customer. The data section comprises the fields which describes the type of data that is being accessed and the access permissions associated, that for how long the data can be stored with the customer for the user, which range of data can be accessed by the customer, and all such information. The purpose of data access, whether the purpose is for loan or for monitoring or for wealth management, all those things. The logging of consent, the data flows, and then finally the digital signature to maintain the authenticity of the signature of the consent artifact. In account aggregator, the consent artifact has been derived from the structure which is specified by METI, and this artifact can be applied to any domain, including telecom. Before talking about type of consent, kindly allow me to brief you all about the another consent-based initiative by RBI, that is called as Public Credit Registry, also called as PCR. Just like account aggregator facilitates the asset data of the customer, wherein the asset of the customer can be fetched, PCR provides the credit information of the customer. It basically gives the liabilities data, wherein all the liabilities which are owed by the customer, how many loans he have, what is the credit cards he have, all those types. So PCR is also a citizen-centric initiative by RBI, which will give a complete 360-degree view of the customer's credit information. Now, coming on to the types of consents, based on the structure given by METI, the following 4 types have been derived for account aggregator and PCR. The first comes the explicit consent, wherein the customer himself is required to provide access to his data for the data consumer. This consent is used in both account aggregator and PCR, whereas the remaining three are applicable only in PCR. The second consent type of consent is the deemed consent, wherein an organization, suppose I am a bank and if I am giving a loan to a customer, then I would have a deemed consent by the customer to access all his other liabilities and credit data at a summary level. That is a deemed consent. The third one is the implicit consent, wherein the customer himself logs into the portal and sees his data. And the fourth one is the sovereign consent, wherein the customer's data has been used and it has been accessed by the law enforcement agencies and the regulatory bodies. And as mentioned previously, the consent structure is not only limited to financial data, but can be used in other domain also. Just for example, the APIs which are published on the Metis API Setu portal. Now, the APIs are using the same consent structure for domains like education, banking, insurance, and healthcare. Coming on to the next slide, the account aggregator. Now, what is an account aggregator? Now, this has already been covered in detail by Mr. Raghuratji in the previous session. So, I'll just summarize it again. Account aggregator is a technology-led inter-regulatory policy initiative, which means through account aggregator, a user will be able to share his data across all the financial sector regulators, be it SEBI, RBI, IRDA, PFRDA, and all the four regulators. Now, the account aggregators are a new class of regulated entities which are to be registered as NBFC AAs with RBI. They are responsible for managing the electronic consent and facilitating exchange of financial data. AA is a complex multi-stakeholder system which comprises of many FIPs, FIUs, and AAs. These three terms I'll explain in detail in the next slide. The impact which AA would have on the banking sector would be it would increase the efficiency by exchanging digitally signed financial information. It will be more customer centric, as in the customer would be at the center of the entire ecosystem, and without his explicit consent, the data could not be shared. The AA framework would also pave way for the many innovative fintech use cases, in addition to the current uses which are going on currently. Coming on to the stakeholders, on the top it's the RBI, who is responsible for the providing the directions of the framework for registration and operation of account aggregator. Then comes the FIPs, that is the financial information providers. It can be any entity, it can be a bank, can be an NBFC, AMC, an insurance company, a pension fund, or even GSTN. Account aggregators who are registered with RBI as an NBFC AA. FIUs, that is the financial information user. These are the end consumers of the data and must be a regulated entity by any of the financial sector regulator. Then comes the customer. He is the one who has entered into a contractual agreement with the AA. Debit. They are responsible for defining, publishing, and managing the technical specs, and the regulators RBI, SEBI, IRDA, EPFO, and PFRDA. On to the journey so far, where it all started. It all started in the year 2014, where the Junior Minister in his interim budget speech said that there should be a single record for all the financial assets of a customer. Now, in August 2015, the Government of India approved account aggregators to be registered as NBFCs under Section 45, 451F of the RBI Act. In September 2016, RBI released the master directions for account aggregators. In November 2019, API specs version 1.1.1 were released by RBI and published on the Revit website. Between November 19 and September 2020, 6 account aggregators got in principle approval from RBI and their technical evaluation was done. In September 2020, API specs version 1.1.2 was published on RBI website along with the FAQs. And the current year, this 2021, we have just now released API specs version 1.1.3 a few weeks ago. We also have working groups formed. We have conducted 8 workshops so far in this year, and there are several working drafts and concept proposals lined up in the pipeline. These FI types have already been covered by Mr. Raghuraj, but just to divide those into regulator wise, we have 9 FI types under RBI, 9 under SEBI. Again, this pertains to the instruments which are regulated by the regulator. Just like deposits, term deposit, recurring, these are all are regulated by RBI. This equities, mutual funds, these are regulated by SEBI. IRDA has 2 FI types, PFRD has 1, and in the others bucket, we have 3 from GST and 1 from EPFO. The 3 highlighted in green under the RBI, these are the only 3 FI types which are currently being adopted in the AA ecosystem, and the others would be adopted in subsequent releases. Now, I would like to hand over the platform to Ms. Sally to proceed this and carry this forward. Thanking you all.
Thank you. So thanks, Raghuraj sir and Saurabh for this insightful information. I'm Sally Kulkarni. I'm also from the Revit, and I will take this forward and walk you through the A ecosystem overview as well as its API specification. So this is the overview of the account aggregator. So this side we have a financial information user, that is an FIU. Here we have financial information provider, that is an FIP. We have a customer, and all the interaction between these entities is happening through the account aggregator. Also, there is a central registry plan to store the metadata of these entities, so that whenever a new entity comes on board, so that the metadata of that entity, like certificates or the URLs, will be discoverable to all, and the integration with that entity would be seamless. So the customer journey will be covered in the following slide. So we have 3 sections here. So first is the customer onboarding journey, then the consent authorization journey, and third one is the FI sharing data journey. So in the customer onboarding journey, whenever a customer wants to avail any services or from the FIU, so he can reach out to the FIU, and then FIU will redirect him to the account aggregator, or the customer himself can download the account aggregator app and log in. So once it is done, then we come to the consent authorization journey, where then the FIU will require the consent from the customer to access his financial information. Then the customer can discover and link his account in the account aggregator. So this part can also be done here at the time of onboarding, but if it is not done, then the customer can do it. And then customer can generate the consent at the account aggregator to provide the financial information. There is an alternative flow that the FIU himself can raise a consent request and in the account aggregator, and then it will come to the customer for the approval. So customer will then select the accounts for which he wants to share the data and approve the consent. Once approved, then it goes, the account aggregator generates that consent, and a copy of it is also shared with an FIP for a later point in validation. The third part is the customer's FI data sharing. So FIU will then uses the consent and request for the FI data from the account aggregator. Then AA sends that request to one or more FIPs to generate the financial information. Then FIP validates this consent which was shared with it previously in this part. And if it is valid, then only it generates that financial information and notifies account aggregator saying that the data is ready. Account aggregator then aggregates the FI data. So if there are one or more FICs, so here the aggregate means that account aggregator cannot access the data. It's all encrypted. So by aggregate means that it maps. So if there are one or more FIPs for which FIU has requested the data, then account aggregator handles that mapping, and then it provides FIU all the handles which it then uses to fetch the actual data. Next is the design principles. So the design principles are the user experience, simplified central registry, and security and privacy. But the most important points in the design principle are, first is the strong encryption. So all the data that passes through account aggregator is encrypted using AES 256 encryption. So the financial information data which flows from FIP to FIU is encrypted using AES 256, and the shared secret key for the AES 256 is generated using ECDH, that is an ecliptic curve Diffie-Hellman algorithm. So A is completely data blind here. There are no keys present for the decryption in the AA domain. So the parameters for this ECDH, which is used to generate the shared secret key, are known only to the FIP and FIU. So AA cannot decrypt the data in any way. Also, there is no long-term storage allowed at AA for the encrypted data also. It is only a transient storage till the time FIU fetches the data. If FIU does not fetch the data in a stipulated time, then AA has to delete the data and FIU will fetch it again. FIU has to request the data again. Coming on to the AA ecosystem API specifications. So these are the specifications which are published on the Rebit website. There are several categories, and the columns here, AA, FIP, and FIU. So these depict the APIs which are to be hosted by that particular entity. So when we say the account aggregator, so these APIs are hosted by the account aggregator and consumed by FIP or FIU. Similarly, for FIP, these are the APIs which are hosted by FIP and consumed by account aggregator. FIU will never call FIP directly. There has to be account aggregator in between all these. So the categories are account discovery and linking, for discovering the account and linking the FIP accounts with the account aggregator. Then consent, for raising the consent request. Then consent management, getting the consent status, getting the actual consent itself. FI data flow, where the FI data is requested as well as fetched. The notification APIs, where whenever there is any change in the account linking, consent status, FI data status, so the notification APIs are for that. And the monitoring APIs. So I will briefly go over the Rebit website now, and to show how the APIs are published. So this is the Rebit website, and here we have the three API specifications: account aggregator, FIP, and FIU given. Also, we have the FI types defined here, purpose codes, and the FAQ page. So I will go one by one. So this is the FI schemas which are defined. Then these are the purpose codes. There are 5 purpose codes. Then the frequently asked questions contains the information about what is AA, FIP, FIU, and also the API security related information, like how the data should be encrypted, how it should be signed, and all. This is the versioning that has been maintained, and this is the actual API specification. So I will not go in the detail of each and every API. So you can feel free to log onto this site and check. And there is a common email ID which Rebit has, onto which you can post any queries. So that email ID is also given at the end of this presentation. So feel free to check this website, and if any queries, then you can post it on that mail ID. I will go back to the presentation. Now the role of Rebit in the AA standard development. So how these API specifications are published. So this is the governance process for it. So first is we have a proposed work item. So this can come, means the requirement. It can come either from the stakeholders saying that we need this new business feature, or it can directly come from the regulator also. Like GSTN is going to be onboarded as an FIP, so that will come from the regulator itself. So after that, the initial analysis is done at the REBIT, and there is also a working group formed, comprising of the technical and security team members from the industry stakeholders. So it will be discussed with them also, and a working group draft will be prepared. After that, it will be presented to a wider audience, that is all the stakeholders, AAs, FIPs, FIUs, and based on their comments, then the user comments draft will be prepared. After that, the REBIT will prepare the recommended standard and send it to RBI for the approval. After the approval, it comes under the approved standard, and then REBIT will publish it on our website. Now, post that, there will be a post-release maintenance for any amendment or revision for that standard. Now, this side is the standards which are already published. So these are the 4 that we saw on the REBIT website: core APIs, FI types, purpose codes, and API security. And these are the work items which we are planning and in progress. So the green ones are the most important for the ecosystem, and others are also we are parallelly working. So I will go through them one by one. So first is the GSTN's FIP. So there are 4 FI types which are being finalized along with the communication with GSTN for the MSME lending use case. So GSTN is very, very important in the account aggregator ecosystem to be onboarded, because the GSTN data will greatly benefit the MSME lending. So the lenders can have the data at one place, the assets as well as the GSTN returns, and the profile of that trader will be available through the account aggregator only. And according to a statistics given by one of the FIU, it is they are saving the time and cost up to 90 to 95% for processing or disbursing a loan. Then the second one is the customer enrollment. So as you saw in the previous slides, so we do not have a standard APIs defined for the customer registration. So that has been up to the account aggregator how they will implement the onboarding process. But now, to overcome some implementation challenges and to have a standard across all the account aggregators, we are also going to define the standards for the customer enrollment as well. Then the third is the audit trail and the MIS reporting. So once the account aggregator ecosystem matures and there are many participants in that, so the standardization of logging is also very important, so that based on the if we get the uniform logs out of all the account aggregators, then it can drive the adoption report as well as the MIS reporting, like how many customers are onboarded, how many consents are created, and also that all can be derived out of the log. So we are also working for this standardizing the logging to get the logging out of the account aggregators in a standard way. Next is the FIU security control. So as we saw in the previous slides as well by Srivastava sir and even the Raghuraj sir, that the data of the misuse of data should be avoided. So there should be some confidence in the FIP that the data that they are being shared through the account aggregator should not be misused. So that is why we are going to come up with a checklist for FIU, saying that there are some attributes in the consent that gives the data life or the frequency, or if the consent is revoked, then it should not it should not use that data anymore if the customer has revoked the consent. So so all these all these parameters, the FIU has to comply. So for that, we are going to come up with a checklist so that there is a confidence in the FIP that the data shared to the account aggregator won't be misused. Next is the GST and e-invoice use case, where we have 3 FI types. So e-invoice lending use case. Then the central registry, which is a central repository for all the account aggregator FIP, FIU to store their metadata information. Grievance redressal to be set up. Other use cases such as fraud management, federated KYC, and in the future, PCR as an FIP. So as we saw in the earlier slide, PCR has the 360-degree view of customers' credit information. So if PCR comes on board as an FIP, then through the account aggregator, a FIU can get the customer's asset data as well as the liability data at one place. But this is in the future, and we are yet to evaluate that as a use case. Next is the engagement roadmap with the industry stakeholders. So in order to implement all the work items that have been listed in the previous slide, so we are continuously engaging with the industry stakeholders and conducting workshop. So this is the overall plan. So we have a API release cycle, which is quarterly, once per quarter, which is a maximum 4 times a year. And in the 2021, so in the Feb 2021, we conducted a workshop with all the AAs and proposed the version 1.1.3 changes. Then with the subsequent iterations, finally we published in the June 2021, we released the version 1.1.3. And now we are targeting for the September release, which will be a major version. And we will be working on all the work items that are given in the previous slide, such as GST and as FIP and the customer enrollment process and all. In addition to that, we also are working to form the working groups for the FI types which are given under all these regulators. Because the FI types are already published on the Rebit website, but there is no adoption yet. So in order to enhance or refine those FI types, we are going to form the working group per regulator, and then that engagement will continue throughout the year. Coming on to the next, this is a very wide view of how account aggregator gets onboarded in the ecosystem. So this has been covered with the Raghuraj sir's presentation also. So I will cover it briefly. First is there is a create a new regulatory space by using the master direction, which is published by RBI. Then RBI has appointed an external advisory committee, which will provide the in-principle license to an entity who wishes to be an account aggregator. Then they, after getting the in-principle approval, they can do an implementation, a POC, and then submit it for the technical evaluation. So once the technical evaluation and qualification criteria is met, then they will be onboarded as the account aggregator. And after that, the monitoring and supervision part comes, where the periodic audit will be done and the regulatory reporting will be done. And also one point here is that once they are onboarded, that means they get an operating license. And after the operating license only, they can participate in the market. And then the regulatory activities will come, and also the grievance redressal has to be set up in the account aggregator. This is the active participant snapshot. So we have 4 As currently which have got the operating license, and there are 2 more who have got the in-principle license. And in the FIPs and FIU, these are the major leading banks are here. And also there are some pure FIUs like Lending Card, DML Finance. So with this, we come to the end of our presentation. So if you have any queries, you can reach out to this email ID. And also, as Saurabh said earlier, this complete framework and the consent artifact is very generic. And if you want to explore it for this telecom sector, then you can reach out to us anytime, me, Saurabh, or our sir, Sushanta sir, who is leading this initiative from the Rabbit side. And we will be happy to provide assistance. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Shali and Mr. Saurabh Gupta for sharing your experience, information about API specs, AA ecosystem, and consent artifact structure. Thank you very much. Mr. Manish, are you on the platform?
Yeah, hi Jitendra. Hi.
Okay. Yeah, 1 minute. Let me have a quick introduction about Mr. Manish. Manish is a co-founder of the FinView account aggregator. He brings 18 years of industry experience in technology, banking, having worked in the global banks such as HSBC, Barclays in India, UK. During his working with the HSBC and other banks, MNC, he was leading global technology project in area of transaction banking and corporate banking with focus and experience in he has been worked in the many other countries, US, UK, and he is holding the Bachelor of Engineering degree in computer and Master in computer science from US. Mr. Manish, I hand over platform to you to share your experience.
Yeah, thanks Jitendra for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me here. I think it's been a great session so far. Hopefully I'm able to provide more information on the A ecosystem. It's the brand that we are using for our A in the A ecosystem. Currently, actually, I mean, we've got a license sometime in March 2020. And since then, we've been actively involved in the A ecosystem. And having partnered with over 10 plus partners in the ecosystem with the early adopters with various banks, NBFCs. So we are one of the first in the ecosystem to be live. So we've just gone live with our A app, which is now available on Google Play Store. And we've also been actively involved with Rabbit in the various workshops and as well as the working groups. Yeah, can you move on to the next slide, please? Yeah, so I think what I'll do is I'll just give you a quick overview what the customer onboarding current journey is, and I think we've have a brief overview of what the ecosystem looks like. So what is in it for the customer? So the customer will have to first register on an A app, which they can actually download, a mobile app which can be downloaded, or they can go on the web and register on app. So for example, once a customer registers on FinView, they can choose a unique handle, which is very much like how in the UPI flow, we can provide a handle. So it can be either your name @FinView, or it can be a mobile number @FinView, which will then be assigned to you. Now that will be unique for you when you register on an individual A. Then you set a PIN, which is for obviously logging into the app and to approve consents. And you provide a mobile number. So this is part of the onboarding process. The mobile number is authenticated via an OTP. And once that authentication is complete, the customer gets registered on the account aggregator. The next step would be to actually link the customer's accounts with that particular handle. So that is actually a linking process. I think some of it you would have got from the previous Rabbit presentation. So what the customer will actually have to do here is very simple and very similar to how the UPI flow works. So the customer can select the institution where they have an account with. So it could be with any of the banks which are onboarded on the A ecosystem. They select the institution, and basis the mobile number that they had actually registered with, using that mobile number, the accounts are actually discovered or found with the bank or the FIP, the customer can then select which accounts they want to link. So it's a total choice for them as to which accounts they want to link into their AA profile. And once the customer chooses the account, an OTP is sent by the FIP or the institution where the customer holds account. The customer enters the OTP and that completes the linking process. So that's how, I mean, if you see from an experience and onboarding perspective, it is quite streamlined and quite simple. Of course, behind the scenes, there's a lot that is happening in terms of the API calls, as well as the encryption of information and the signing of the APIs and etc. So all this is happening, and that's of course the security by design. But for a customer, it is fairly simple. So once a customer, you can go to the next slide. Jitendra, can you go to the next slide, please?
Yes.
Thank you. So once a customer has actually registered on an account aggregator, let's say they go to an FIU for availing some financial service. So all that they have to do is provide their customer their unique handle, which could be Munish@finview, or it could be the mobile number @finview. The FIU will then actually raise a consent request. The customer will then see the details of the consent. If you see on the screen, the customer will get actual details of firstly who's requesting for the consent, when that consent was requested, whether that consent is needs access to account information on a periodic basis, or it is a one-time consent, how long the information will be stored, when will the consent expire, and what information of the account will be actually accessed and from what period. So all that is quite transparent to the customer. The customer can then select which accounts from which they want to share the information, and these are the linked accounts that they had done previously. And basis that, they can either accept or reject the consent. Now, this interaction can be done in one way, where the customer can approve the consent on a mobile app or in a web. There's also the option of actually for an FIU to integrate with an AA flow. So that means that the customer need not initially download the app. The journey will happen from the FIU to the AA. And that's very much similar to how a payment gateway works in currently. So the onboarding, of course, for an FIU will be much quicker. It's a much seamless journey, and it's not a broken journey. But these are of course various options. It's up to the FIU how they want to implement it. But as an AA, we do offer that in terms of having a web or an SDK integration with the FIU. Yeah, if we can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so once a customer has actually accepted the consent can actually be, details of the consent can be viewed by the customer in the AA application, or that can be mobile or web. And the customer has complete visibility and control in terms of the consent. So the consent can be revoked or it can be paused. There's audit information in terms of the consent, when it was requested, when it was accepted, when the consent is due to expire. Then the details of the consent when the customer accepted it, when they received the request from an FIU, the accounts which the customer had selected which are part of that consent, and of course the data access activity of the consent. So whenever the customer has given a consent to the FIU uses that consent to pull financial information from the selected accounts. Every time the customer will be notified as to when the information is accessed, and that activity is recorded. So the customer can actually see on their app when that FI information was requested by FIU. So all this is information which is available to the customer, and it's very clear and transparent. Yeah, if you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is the, yeah, if you could go a little down, please. Yeah, thank you. So this is the overview ecosystem. I think this was presented in previous slide by Rebit. It's so we've got the FIPs, the account actor, which facilitates the information sharing, and the data consumers or the FIUs, which again are all the regulated entities falling under the 4 financial sector regulators. So it could be banks, NBFCs, insurance companies, or even RI who are regulated by SEBI. So these are the participants of the ecosystem. And of course, all the consent management happens on the account aggregator, and the customer can manage their consents on the account aggregator. The exchange of information is again shared securely via the standard APIs which are defined by Rebit. So all A's, all entities need to implement those standard specifications to participate in the ecosystem. Yeah, we can go to the next slide, please. So in terms of who will actually benefit out of this, the end customers themselves now, they now have actually a secure way to actually share information, secure way to get a 360-degree view of their accounts or financial assets. So they don't need to really share their internet banking passwords or any apps that actually read SMSs and provide them or give them a view of their balances. So all those technologies, all those ways or previous methods will kind of go away, and that screen scraping, as we call it, will kind of go away. And now we have the customers themselves have a very secure environment, where they can actually get information about their assets. This will also help in terms of increasing the financial inclusion, of course, because now information is available digitally, and with the increase in mobile phone users, it will be much easier for customers access and institutions to access the financial information. The other beneficiary will be MSMEs, because now on the basis of getting information to the MSMEs financial current accounts, or on the GST based information, they can be cash flow based lending could be done, and the loans can be then dispersed faster, the decisions can be done faster, and the MSMEs will be able to quickly get working capital loans in matter of minutes. And since now the entire ecosystem is digitally available, all this can be done seamlessly, and it can be self-serviced mode. I mean, even there's also option, of course, of having an assisted mode of providing a loan, where an agent might assist the MSME, but now MSMEs themselves can actually avail of loans. This will also help them to potentially look at getting, preferred lower interest rates or loan offers from the institutions who are lenders who are providing the loan. And with the aggregated view across their multiple accounts, they can also reconcile information for accounting or cash flow position purpose. And of course, the institutions themselves who are participating as FIUs would definitely benefit out of this, because now their loan disbursal can be done quicker. There will be lesser number of dropouts that can happen for lenders, because now typically one would actually have to share their bank account statement, which might be a manual process. The customer will have to actually go to an internet banking, download their PDF statement, or go to a branch, get a statement and hand it over to the lender. But with the AA ecosystem, I mean, those manual processes will kind of go away, and that was one of the reason where some of our FIUs that we have worked with have seen considerable number of dropouts where the customer is not able to provide the statements on time, and in some cases also it could be fraudulent. With this ecosystem, of course, now they can actually get a handle to the customer's account information in real time, and that will obviously lead to much more efficiency in their operation. It will reduce the loan processing costs, and of course they can provide more value add services for the customers. And of course the customer is at the center of it all, because they are involved in giving the consent. So at the end of it, they will know that to whom they have shared the information and to what institution. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so these are some of the use cases that are currently being adopted and actually being implemented in the ecosystem currently. So personal finance management is one of the use case, which is for retail customers. Now this is being done by some banks or even by some RIAs as regulated entities. So in order to give the customer a 360-degree view of their financial assets. They can also give information on the customers, how they track their spends, their savings, etc. So for example, let's say if a customer's banking primary bank is bank A, and then they want to actually aggregate all their account information in that particular bank, they can now do that with the A ecosystem. They can actually log on to the internet banking, give a consent via an AA app, and then link their accounts in the internet banking for their primary bank. So that gives them the visibility of all their assets across various asset classes. The next one is on lending. Of course, lending right now it is being used for either cash flow based lending or for personal loans. Cash flow based lending is again for MSMEs, where the MSMEs can get working capital loan in a matter of minutes, and this can be done via sharing the bank account as well as GST, which of course it is a proposed infrastructure that will be plugged into the AA network. But with GST and with the bank account statement, MSMEs will actually get much faster and better working capital loan. Personal loans is another use case which is being adopted, and where the bank account statement is required. So for example, if a customer has to give a last 6 month statement, now this can be shared digitally, and the journeys can then be incorporated with the FIU very seamlessly. The next is another use case which also is being looked at by some of the FIUs, is on the cash position for SMEs. For example, they can now, banks can probably give SMEs a 360-degree view of their consolidated cash positions across multiple bank accounts. So currently all this information would be very cumbersome to collate and aggregate, but now with the AA ecosystem, since information is securely available digitally, this can be easily done and provided as an additional product by banks. And wealth management is again for RIAs. Right now, we have been working with few RIAs exploring solution in terms of them offering it for their customers, where they need to again aggregate a lot of the information for their customers. This is right now a manual process, by playing around in Excel or collecting the information from their customer. Now with this, they can actually automate the process. They could actually look at the investments that the customer has made and actually give better advisory services in terms of how the investments are done for the customers. So this is another area which use case where the A ecosystem will definitely be beneficial. If you can go to the next slide, please. So I think, yeah, in terms of telecoms, they can be, I mean, they can explore as data consumers or FIUs of financial data by using some of this information bank data or customers' other financial asset. Could look at possibly more personalized credit limits or even personalized tariff plans, or look at auto upgrading the customer from a prepaid to postpaid for any individuals without any security deposit. So looking at the customer's information, for example, how many deposits they have, how many, what is their history, transaction history on their bank account, if they're salaried individuals, basis that the telcos can actually use the financial data as an FIU. There's also option for how telco data can be used in consumer lending. Now, this can also be an alternate source of information for lenders or NBFCs or banks to use telecom information for doing the credit risk assessment. For example, looking at their payment history, because, or looking at whether they are prepaid or postpaid, looking at the demographics. Now, this can be useful for any loans that can be given out for small ticket size loans for the unbanked people, or for those who do not have much of credit history. Again, looking at the bank information, personal and personalized plan data can be used to increase the credit limits. You can go to the next slide, please. So some of this, so as a FIP or a data provider, telcos can look at providing this information in terms of customer demographics, their postpaid, prepaid behavior, their usage patterns. And with the A now account aggregator in place, all that is required is for the connectivity to be in place between the telco data providers and the consumers. And this is all can be done on standardized APIs with the back of a customer's consent. Can go to the next slide, please. So in terms of A, we are actually right now in the early stages of the A account aggregator, but there are been quite a few banks who have actually getting onboarded as FIP, FIU onto the A ecosystem, and they are the early adopters. We've actually already integrated and have agreements with them. There are some NBFCs who are also, and fintechs who are regulated fintechs, already participating on the ecosystem. We are currently under integration with some of them to onboard them on the A ecosystem. In terms of the academia industry adoption, also getting some of the fintechs to participate and come up with better use cases. There was a hackathon which was conducted last year by the industry, and there were about 550 plus participants who were there, and there were a couple of product teams, fintechs, who were all part of this hackathon and actually use the A sandboxes to build out their particular use cases. So there's been a great deal of industry adoption in terms of getting on board A ecosystem. So we are hoping to take it further and looking at the launch further of the ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Munish, for such a nice presentation. There will be question answer session after the end of all presentation. Next, I will be invite Mr. Amol. Mr. Amol, are you online?
I believe, I hope this conversation which we are having right now will be beneficial from a practical implementation standpoint. I do not have many slides to touch upon. I just have one slide which I have created, and these are the points that I intend to cover as part of this particular presentation. Point number one is that from a implementation standpoint, typically the way it works is that you first begin up with a business use case. So in State Bank of India, what we have done is that the use case that we have taken is we are working on a facility to provide the customer a one view in terms of his CASA through the AA framework. So that is a plain simple use case that we are working upon right now. The consent mechanism is through the AA application. We are working with One Money, right? The last part is where does the user get to see this? So that's where our flagship application YONO comes into play. In YONO, we are planning to present the user with a single view of the portfolio of all the accounts that the person has with other banks. So once the person gives the consent, then in the YONO application, the person gets to see the accounts which are there for himself with the other banks. Now, where does the, what are the other practical points that need to be looked at? So the first point here is that this is an evolving ecosystem. Currently, we are focusing on showing just the account list to the customer. Now, I do have a similar experience of implementing Intuit, which is the personal finance manager product for an earlier bank that I worked in. So there, I would just correlate that experience with the activity which is going on over here. So typically, what we started off with it is first to show the list of accounts that the person has with the other providers, so that we start getting a one view. The best example would be you get the balances of the accounts which are there with other providers, and you try to show a single, your current cash availability as one of the values. Then you start looking at the second part, which is the narration that you get from each of the account statements. Once you start looking at the narrations, this is where the secret sauce lies, and this is where you will have to start understanding the details which are there in the narration, because the slice and dice of the data which you do, the PFM kind of activity which is required, like where are your spends, where are you saving, what is the probability of you to reduce your expenditure, what is the probability of you to invest into a new product. The narration becomes key for all your future perspective. Hence, I said that from a spend analysis perspective, the data that you fetch from the FIPs, that is where you start detailing it out. You start understanding the various segments in that narration, and then you understand what exactly is the spend or the credit for. The third part to this entire story is the implementation of other products, that is your credit cards, your DMAT data from other providers as well as our subsidiaries. The whole idea over here is to get a unified view of the person from the full perspective. That is, where are the investments being made, where are the outflows that are happening, what are the avenues for the person to save more, what are the avenues to save towards a dream, dream project that the person is working upon. So while I've mentioned credit card and DMAT, then there is the loans account. Now, one typical issue which we ran into the earlier example of the implementation of Intuit that I'm talking about is the way data is structured in different service providers or the FIPs. Typically, let us take the example of a credit card. Now, in a credit card, you have your own credit card, you have your add-on credit card. So there are limits which get shared between you and the add-on credit card. The question that gets asked time and again is that, is this add-on credit card to be treated as part of the customer who's getting the data through the AA framework? And if it is getting represented, should that expenditure which is shown on that particular credit card, is it attributable to this to the person who's viewing it, or is it attributable to the person who has the add-on credit card? Now, these are the questions which need to be answered upfront from a business use case perspective. so that you do not end up doing repeat development. You do not end up doing repeat cleanup of data. And right from the word go, you have a very clear vision of what is the end state that you are going to reach as far as aggregation of accounts from various ecosystems is concerned. The other point also that we are deliberating upon internally is that the size of SBI, right? I mean, with more than 40 crore accounts that we have, we serve 1 in every 3 Indians in the country. Now, given the size of SBI, we will be more of a FIP than a FIU. And these are the discussions which the business team is having in the various AA forums. So the business teams, I believe, are interacting a lot with the in the AA forums in terms of understanding the benefits model and the various options of monetization that is available in terms of data sharing. While I am the custodian of the customer data, the point here is that I still do a lot in terms of securing the data, nurturing that particular account, seeding that particular account, and ensuring that I provide the services in the right possible time. So this is as far as the business use case is concerned. I'll just summarize what I mentioned earlier. It is very important to be clear on the end state. This is an evolving ecosystem. So it makes practical sense to look at things product by product, evaluate the kind of data that is coming from every product, evaluate the ownership of that product, the life cycle of that particular product, and then you keep on adding it into the single view that you are creating from a FIU perspective. Correct. Then comes the second part which I wanted to touch upon is the non-functional requirement. Now, this is fairly important for the simple reason being that this is an evolving ecosystem. So first and foremost, the volume of the business needs to be understood, and the time of the day during which the data gets extracted. Like if I look at the concept of the AA framework, if a user gives a consent during the day, now is it at that point in time itself you would want to pull the full data, or in the case of a DMAT, would you want to wait till the end of the day when all the transactions are completed and then you would want to pull it out in the batch process? The second is that from a volume perspective, if a whole lot of users give consent at the same point in time, what is the kind of volume which my current system can handle? Because this is a new stream of data which has to be handled by my system. So it is not just the FIU and the FIP system. I also have to do investments and strengthening on the layers below it, which is my core system which holds my data. Will that core system be able to handle the kind of requests that come in at a given point in time? Like suppose there is a campaign that you give consent right now and then there is some kind of benefit coming in, and if all the players give a consent at the same point in time, how exactly would my system behave? So these are points of discussions which need to be done right at the word go. The second one is the sizing of the infrastructure. So you can always begin with a conservative setup, but when you deploy a FIP and a FIU module, and I'm assuming that the AA framework which is deployed on the cloud has a fair amount of flexibility built into it from a scalability perspective. So when you deploy your FIU and a FIP module on the bank's premises, that point in time, we should be very clear in terms of how elastic that entire setup is, so that given a sudden surge of traffic that is coming in, will it be able to scale up adequately? At the same time, it has to be factored in that the systems below, because most of the times there is a middleware layer which is being put up, and then that middleware layer communicates with all the core systems which are there in the bank. And the core systems has its own life cycle of the day. That is, certain type of transactions take place at 10 in the morning, then there is an EOD which is running, there are batch processings being done. So all these considerations should be taken in when you decide on the sizing of the infrastructure, and the input for this would be the volume of the business and the frequency at which you pull the data out from these core systems. The last part which is of importance is the security related aspect. Now, every organization has its own security guidelines, both in terms of hardening of the systems as well as the way access of data is done between two systems. So we are working with One Money in terms of ensuring that they comply with the security requirements of the bank. And the same FIP and the FIU module that we are deploying over here in the bank, we are ensuring that for any system that is deployed within the bank's premises, it complies to the security requirements that is being specified. We are also working with the partner in terms of ensuring that the products which they give to us complies with the architectural requirements, that is use of software. So we have a governance mechanism in place in terms of what kind of OSS and database can be used, what are the additions of the database that can be used, what are the hardening parameters for the database as well as the OS, the kind of web server and the app server that is being used. So this is one place where every partner that would be interacting with the banks need to factor in, because most of the times the discussions are, because it is evolving and there are a lot of ideas that are happening, the discussions are generally centered around the business use cases. However, adequate amount of time, I would rather say equal if not more amount of time should be spent on the non-functional requirements, the kind of traffic pattern that is anticipated, and the kind of data volume and the period of the day when the data would be moving in and out of the bank setup. Security by itself is not even a point of compromise. So every partner who interacts with banks should factor in that there would be a fair amount of alteration done to the software to comply with the security requirements of the bank. These are broadly the points that I wanted to touch upon as part of this conversation from a practical consideration. I thank you all for the time that you have given to me. I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Amol. You have shared the structure of the FIP and FIU perspectives, and you have shared what SBI is doing in this domain. Thank you very much. So now our next session is question answer session. That will be.
Somebody has a question. Women girls want to ask question. They can have turning on their mic.
Unmute him.
Yes.
Hello, good afternoon, all of you.
Yes. You can ask your question, sir.
I am audible?
Yes, Mr. Goel, go ahead.
Okay. Very good afternoon, and thanks to all the participants for making wonderful presentations. But when I was going through all the presentations, somehow I felt the beneficiary of this entire AA system is FIUs and FIPs. What's the benefit of the user in this whole thing? As an end user, as a buyer, as a user, whose information is being captured in the system and being digested by other two entities, how the user is getting benefited? Is it that we are going to see one day where I go for a bank loan and bank does not ask me a single paper? Because if you see in the digital ecosystem, every information is available, right? From my PAN to my Aadhaar to my bank statement to my ITRs, everything, and including all my assets and liabilities are there, in the banking system, or with the different entities which are part of FIPs. So when we can see that day, then only the user, as a customer, I will see the benefits of the system. Otherwise, this becomes largely a system between FIPs and FIUs.
All right. We have understood your question. I think you have missed some point. This lady there from Revit, can you please clarify? Or?
Sure, sir. Sir, let me allow. Vimalji, let me allow. Sir, I would not agree to your point that only FIPs and FIUs are at advantage to this. Because if FIPs and FIUs are at advantage, then ultimately the user will be beneficiary. Because just to give an example, I won't be taking name. One of the biggest lending entity in the country, they have gone live with on this AA ecosystem. Earlier, what they used to say was that the customer was made to run around for the documents. He has to collect all the documents and all those, which used to take nearly 12 to 15 days. And that too, it was not guaranteed that whatever the document which were being bought are sufficient. Now, with the use of this AA, the entire journey is completed within a 1 day. And the cost and time which is being saved, a portion of which can be forwarded to the customer also. So earlier, say suppose if he was getting he can get a waiver of say 0.5% or 50 basis points due to this. So ultimately, it is the customer only who is benefiting in the terms of time and cost.
Okay. By the way, sorry, I'm just asking a very quick question. Is there any fee payable by the customer as a user of this service?
Fee table, as in, sir, can you please clarify?
I see. In case I register in any platform.
Yes, service charges. They have to pay service charges. It's there.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other question? If there is any other question, they can raise their hand.
Yeah,
Or
Mr.
otherwise,
Bhatia, can you please respond as to who pays for the services and who fixes the charges? Is it Rebit or RBI? Or
Yeah.
the aggregators are free to charge? What is the charging model?
Yeah, sure. So currently the model is that aggregators are free to charge. Now in this case, the first one is the FIU will actually pay the A for making those API calls to fetch the information. Now that's between an FIU and A is on the commercial terms what they agree with. Right now the customer may not be charged for availing of these services, but in the future it's possible that an A may charge unless RBI regulates the pricing.
No, RBI has said that it should be transparent. The board should approve service charges, and that should be made transparent so that people know what they are going to charge.
Yes.
Munish, one small question for you. Now, one entity is both FIU and FIA, FI user and also provider, right?
Yes.
So it is allowed, but an aggregator cannot be any of them. That is very strict, right?
That's right. Absolutely correct.
One more question I have, and that is, when an aggregator is onboarded by Rebit or RBI, whatever process, do all the FIUs automatically get onboarded, subject to the APIs being run and tested, etc., or one has to individually go to the FIUs, etc., and then onboard them? What is the method? They should normally, everyone should automatically be connected, isn't it? Gaurav Gupta साहब बताएंगे?
बताएंगे सर. सर बेसिकली सर जनरली सर आप जो बोल रहे हैं वो वैसा ही है, बट that will be possible only when we have a central registry in place, which will be just like a directory of the entities. Currently the registry is being scheduled for the phase 2 of the ecosystem. So as of now, the account aggregator needs to have a bilateral agreements with all the entities. But once the registry is ready and available on the production, as soon as an entity is onboarded, it will be available for everyone.
I have a suggestion for RBI. You have allowed the aggregators to charge the way they are charging all right for the beginning, but at least ask them to place those charging mechanism and charging amount, etc., on their website so that the user knows as to where to go, where it is cheaper to access the services. At least that direction should be given by RBI or Rebit, I don't know how it works, to all the aggregators that look here, you have to publish your charges. For the time being, we have allowed to charge you anything that you wish, but please publish it on your website.
Yes, sir, that provision is there in the master direction. The provision is there that board approved prices means it should be transparent. It should be available to the public. Yes, sir, your suggestion is good. It should be transparent on the website also.
Yes. Thank you.
I have a small one for Amol. Amol Pai. Amol?
Sir, Amol is not here. He has to attend some
Okay.
meeting. So
Yeah, I think Saurabh can also answer this. There was a point saying that the customer will get an advantage of interest rate. Will it work like that?
Sir, I'm just saying it might be the benefit, the cost which is being saved by the user. It might get transferred to the user in this form. I'm not saying only in the percentage form. He can get a waiver in the processing fee, or whatever. Means it's up to the user how he transfers the savings to the customer.
Sir, one more point I want to add here. Sorry for interrupting Sally here. So from the Rebit perspective, we have taken a stance that we will not be involved in the business models of these account aggregators and this. So the whatever initiatives that we are taking, that is purely for the governance point of view and the adoption, how to increase the adoption. But from the business model, how they will charge and not. So Rebit will not play a part in this. So maybe RBI can directly talk to the account aggregators because they are the regulated entities, FIP. But that will not go through the Rebit as of now. So I just want
I got it, madam. What the suggestion was that as it evolves, maybe it will be like open thing that now also insurance we get the best rate. even there is real-time online poaching by insurers nowadays. Because in one case, I was about to pay for the insurance. In between, an SMS came, if you are not yet paid, I am reducing 500 on that, you come. So things are so fast nowadays. So it may evolve like that.
Yes.
So that is one point. So it may, see, the question what he said, what is the use for the customer? This also is one advantage. He has a variety of options, so where he can choose. That's what I was thinking.
Mr. Mittal is asking a question, I think.
Yes, sir. Mr. Sir, you can ask your question. I'm turning on your mic. Mr. Sir?
Okay, Mittal ji. If there are no more questions, we can close.
Yes, sir. We can move on. I think. Thank you all the speakers for answering the question. Now I hand over the dice to Bhala sir for proposing vote of thanks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Vishal. Friends, I have the privilege and I am happy to propose vote of thanks. First of all, my heartfelt gratitude to our member, Shri Bharat Kumar Jog, for gracing the regular session and delivering the keynote address. His words of inspiration always make us strive for higher achievements. My sincere thanks to Shri UK Srivastav, Senior DDG and Head NTI PRIT, under whose guidance, mentorship and rich experience, our institute is progressing leaps and bounds. He was also kind enough to take the inaugural session on TRA recommendations. My appreciation and sincere thanks to all the expert faculty from financial sector, Shri Raghu from IDBRT, Ms. Syari from and Mr. Saurabh from Rebit, Shri Manish from Finvu, Shri Amol, CTO SBI. It is their cooperation which has led to the great success of this webinar. My thanks to all the participants for joining in large number. It gives us a lot of inspiration to perform more and more in times to come and conduct more webinars. Lastly, my thanks to all the fraternity of NTI PRIT, especially my officers, Mr. Jitendra Garg and Vishal Dheer, and the training division, without whose cooperation and help, it is not possible to conduct such a webinar at a grand scale. Thank you all and have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Take care. Be safe.
Thank you.